Welcome to the Festival of Dangerous Ideas podcast. My name is Danielle Harvey and I'm the festival director. Over the coming months, we look forward to sharing with you the audio recordings from the 2022 festival. FODI started in 2009 and is the original Disruptive Ideas Festival. FODI exists to bring to light important conversations that push the boundaries of conventional thought. Drawing truth to power is more dangerous in some parts of the world than others. The combination of satire and anger can make the best political cartoons lethal to politicians, unveiling truths around human rights, leadership and freedom. But where do we draw the line between humour, offence and legality? And for cartoonists trapped between censorship and cancellation, what is there still left to draw? This is the FODI 2022 session, Drawing Truth to Power, with political artist Badiucao and cartoonist Cathy Wilcox, chaired by comedian Dan Ilic.
This is great. A round of applause and we just entered the stage. Oh, fantastic. Oh, a round of applause and we haven't done anything.
Yay!
Save your applause for the end. Thanks very much. Thanks for coming to Talking Pictures up late. It's really great. All right. Today, we are going to be talking with a couple of little doodlers who like to make little pictures. We're going to be asking them about their favourite colours. No, much more serious this morning. On first glance, cartoons are not dangerous. You know, they're squiggly lines on a bit of paper, a bit of paint up against a wall in an alleyway. But for the practitioners of this satirical art, it can be very dangerous. Because cartoons can do something articles, television, documentaries and radio can't really do. Cartoons have the ability to distill a powerful idea in a mere glance, bringing clarity or call bullshit in just a few seconds, much to the chagrin of the powerful targets of satire who have spent their lives and fortunes trying to spin a web of opaqueness. But for the targets of satire, a great cartoon can mean embarrassment. But for the cartoonists, they can pay a much larger price, which brings us to this morning's discussion. Joining us on stage, we have two incredible practitioners at the top of their game when it comes to satirical commentary. You know her as one of the brilliant cartoonists at the Sydney Morning Herald. She's also the president of the Australian Cartoonists Association, a multiple Stanley Award winner and Walkley Award winner. She's also a francophile. Cathy Wilcox.
Thank you.
And he's one of the most prolific political cartoonists and critics of the PRC. As a result, he now calls Melbourne home. He's often incorrectly labelled as the Banksy of China, and as such, I shall not introduce him as that. Please welcome Badiucao. We have got a lot to cover in 50 minutes, and I've got a list of questions here from the festival, and quite frankly, they read a lot like Sky News. Like the first one, for cartoonists trapped between censorship and cancellation, is there anything left to draw?
No.
No, we're done here. No. Well, I think there's a real question in there. This is for both of you. Censorship is real, and it comes in many forms. How do you experience censorship in your work, Badiucao? We'll start with you, because it's so blatant, and then let's get to something a little less blatant with Cathy.
I think censorship has become one of the biggest challenge for my art creation for decades. And for me, I think censorship particularly have a very unique thing is it must coming from a authority. It's like an enforcement of a government that trying to silence you down as an artist. And I do a lot of work that commentating on China's human rights record, the misbehavior of the Chinese Communist Party, which in exchange, they cost a vast work to stopping me from making art. And to be more specific, I have been experiencing harassment in real life. I got followed actually in Australia, in Melbourne. My show will be pulled down from Australia because the owner of the gallery would be afraid that they got retaliated by the Chinese government. When I show in Europe, the Chinese embassy actually would call the local government, the museum or the gallery to stop my show. In a way, they say if they continue my exhibition, they will stop the cultural exchange program between China and those countries. So all of this is really based on this authoritarian government do not like any challenge, any criticism. They all want a voice being very united, which is prizing and love President Xi and this government.
Yeah, Cathy, we've just lived through an authoritarian government with Scott Morrison. Do you experience anything similar to that, or is it a different kind of censorship?
It's a very different kind of censorship. It's a much more subtle, it's a much more tame censorship, in that we don't get told you mustn't criticise the government. Your limits are much more around issues of legality and whether it's legal to say this thing about a person or whether it's potentially defamatory. We have, as you know, or have observed probably, particularly in the last years, we have really powerful defamation laws which are quite chilling on free speech, especially free speech in the public interest when trying to expose and render accountable people in power. So it happens to be that wealthy people in power are the ones who are especially gifted at wielding those defamation laws. So when I do a cartoon that's critical of somebody in power doing something dodgy, it may well, I normally would just file my cartoon and the editor of the day would put it on the page, but if there's something that's likely to be, attract the attention of a person and make them feel that they may be being defamed, then it will be going to the lawyer at the Herald or the Age, and it will be. It's a verb actually. We need to lawyer this cartoon. It gets lawyered, and then the lawyers decide whether it's okay to go, whether it's not. Usually, it's a matter of tweaking a couple of details, and usually it's something that can be argued. So it's very low key, and it's not hardcore censorship, and a lot of it is just the range of what an editor is given to do anyway, because an editor, after all, has the discretion to choose what to publish and what not to publish. The only other thing that I would say that I have encountered in that last year that I hadn't really felt before was a direct contact, being contacted directly by somebody in the Prime Minister's office.
Oh, wow.
And
the name of Scott Morrison.
Not by the name of Scott Morrison, but by the name of his fixer, who sort of has his fingerprints all over a lot of issues, inquiries that would cease to exist once they were in the hands of this person, that they were going to be taking care of this and dealing with the problem and making it disappear and all that sort of thing. So that was a case where. Shall I tell the story?
I remember
the story?
Yeah, this is the case where you drew someone.
So I drew this what was he, head of Prime Minister's office and cabinet or something, Mr. Gatchins.
Yep.
Gatchins. I drew him as being asked to deal with the problem, and he said, yes, of course, I'll deal with it and deliver you the results in the usual way. And visible in this cartoon was the shredder beside his desk. And I depicted him as I usually use some photo reference, looking on Google and, just finding what does this guy's face look like so I can make it look like him. But because he wasn't a well-known face, I probably also put, his name on the door or something like that, or his desk. Which is a thing we try to avoid doing, but when it's necessary. Anyway, so that cartoon went ahead, and the next morning I got, when it went to print in the paper, the next morning I got a phone call from the man himself on my mobile phone, and saying, "Hi, it's Phil Gatchins here, and I just wanted to tell you that the way you depicted me this morning, you put me with a tie, and I don't normally wear a tie." And I said, "Oh, right, okay, well, it's true, I did photo research, and it's true there were a lot of pictures of you without a tie, and I just kind of was in a hurry and figured that there were probably also pictures with a tie, so I just put one on, but you're right. I will be careful never to put you in a tie again.
Something strikes me between these two cultures is very different. The way Australia deals with things is extremely passive-aggressive. The way China deals with things, the only way to describe it is aggressive-aggressive.
Aggressive.
Badiucao, you live in both cultures. Which do you prefer?
I guess now the approach from China is re-education, right? They
Right.
want really putting you into this mechanism. They want to personally cancel you as a good character, but they would also kind of extending the threat, not just to you personally, but also to your family, your friends. I still have family back in China, and time to time they will be caught and taken to the police station and harassed by the National Security Force.
Wow.
But I guess the kind of softened censorship wouldn't extend to your family in Australia, according to my understanding. Back to this question. Also, you mentioned a lot of people want to call me, China's Banksy, because for a very long time I try to hide my face. But I always say, the difference is, I don't think the National Security Police in UK would actually knock in the door of Banksy's pool auntie and saying, okay, your nephew, your cousin did something which is not acceptable, and you have to come with us to the police station. But this happened in Shanghai to my family relatives.
Wow. Yeah. Banksy's work feels a lot tamer than your work as well. I will say that because you don't have to say that. I can't imagine the police knocking on his door saying, "Oh, you dressed us as rats, we'll get you." That doesn't make sense. It's interesting to me that we're kind of having this conversation, almost, what is it, since the attacks in Paris, almost 8-10 years ago now?
That was in 2015.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Did the Charlie Hebdo attacks change the way either of you approach your work, or cartoonists in general?
I think it changed the landscape greatly, and I don't know about if it's changed how we approach our work. It certainly caused everybody to have a bit of a little bit of a moment to reconsider, and I think even in Australia, where we've sort of been happy-go-lucky about how we do our work, it caused people to think, okay, so this stuff can actually have pretty dire consequences if you happen to upset the particular group. So that was chilling in that way, but it was also it's been chilling globally because around the world people would go, oh, it's the consequences. Even of, say, showing Badiucao's work or an exhibition of cartoons where it might invite, usually, unhinged sole operators rather than coordinated attacks. People would decide not to hold an exhibition or even not to run cartoons. The New York Times famously stopped running cartoons because they just said, oh, look, it's just too much trouble. It's too much trouble to hold an exhibition where you've got to have security and police and all the rest of it and worry about whether some nutter's going to come in and do something violent because they disagree with the cartoons. So
feels like a very different kind of pressure than the authoritarian pressure, because it's like this unknown pressure from outside. Like, have you ever felt that kind of pressure yourself, like from unknown entities that aren't, the direct authorities?
Of course, because when you're dealing with agencies from the Chinese government, you sort of know that they will measure their action because worrying about international relation and things. But when you're dealing with like extreme nationalists from China, the potential risk is much higher. It's very hard to prevent them either. But this is a direct result of national propaganda. It's a baby because there's no freedom of speech in China, because there's no diversified understanding, and everyone just heading into one direction, which is getting more and more extreme and crazy, that giving birth to this uncontrolled individual that appearing here or there in lives.
Yeah. One kind of pressure you were telling me the other day, Badiucao, was like in Australia, societal pressure and the idea of cancelling gets weaponised by the Chinese government. Can you tell us a little bit about how the Chinese use our societal norms to kind of try to cancel you and your work?
Right. I mean, obviously, this is a racist country for a long time from the history, and it continues now. But it created byproducts that can be manipulated by authoritarian government like China, which is using racism as a tool to canceling, legitimize the criticism against the government. So a lot of experience that happened to me is like art organizers or media person or general intellectuals wouldn't like to help me to showing my work because they will be worried being labeled by the Chinese government as racist against ordinary Chinese people. And this has been used as a tool to silence the criticism against Chinese government so well. And I think, in general, it shouldn't be a hard thing to distinguish what is a criticism against government, what is discrimination against ordinary people. But just because they don't want to be even to putting into this pool of Samir, they choose to be silent.
Yeah, I can see a very nervous gallery owner or someone going, I'm not racist, we're very woke in Melbourne, yeah. Cathy, you've been doing this for a long time. What kind of changes have you seen in the newsroom and the tolerance to ideas that you draw?
I think I've seen, even since 2001, since the Twin Towers came down, I have seen a sort of an increased nervousness on behalf of the editors, just a little tightening of the reins there.
I thought you were going to say sphincter, but that's
no. Well, they might be tightening the sphincter as well. Just a little more scrutiny than we maybe had before. And I told Badiucao last night a story of how many years ago, when I was filling in for my esteemed colleague Alan Moyer, who at the time was the main, everyday cartoonist, editorial cartoonist at the Herald, and I did a cartoon that was to do with the police handling a psychotic guy on Bondi Beach. It was a famous story at the time, and the police ended up surrounding this fellow and shooting him. And I drew. It wasn't probably on the day after this. It was probably as this story had been examined a bit. But I drew police demonstrating correct protocol in dealing with a person with a mental illness. And there they were all standing like aiming a gun at this guy. So, and the sub-editors or whatever, the chief subs, there's a sort of a hierarchy of people who sort of, process the pages and decide what's going, or put the stuff on the page. And they also are the people who might go, oh, does this need to be lawyered or whatever? And apparently at this point, somebody said, oh, this is a bit, this is going to upset the police. This is a bit of a strong statement here. Do you think we should, pull it? And the editor at the time said, well, we don't normally censor Moyer, so I guess we're not censoring Wilcox. And so that was kind of just the prevailing principle in the newsroom there. It ended up, the cartoon, was well received by people who kind of knew about the matter. The police hated it, but the police couldn't do anything about it. Yeah. And it was, received as having made a fair point. And I think that's the thing that, to contrast with today, where on the one hand, editors sometimes stuff up in ways that then bring huge blowback. They'll run a story or they'll frame a story in a way that is seen to be propagandist or insensitive or whatever, and there'll be a massive blowback, at least on the social media about it, and they'll be, demanding this editor resign or whatever. And then the next minute, that editor is second-guessing the social reaction to a piece of your work and going, oh no, I think that's maybe a little bit too much. No, if you could just change that thing, or no, have you got something else? So that resulted in me doing something where I was even being critical of our industry, of our newsroom's coverage of post the election this year. And the editor didn't like the idea that I would be critical of our own people So then I put up something and I said, well, I have this other idea, which was quite a critical cartoon about China in the Pacific, which did draw criticism from other places. But he was more comfortable with that than me being mean to our newsroom. That's a big change as well, because I think that in previous years the editors have been wise enough to know that it's really good to show that you can be self-critical as well as critical of other people, and we can wear criticism.
Badiucao, you now make cartoons for The Age. Have you come up across similar sort of criticism from your editors?
Yeah, I just feel like, I was just talking to Cathy that I feel like I was a wild ball, just creating cartoon online without editorial decision. All decisions mine. Now I'm kind of halfly domesticated within a new organization.
Adorable little piglet.
I think my challenge is I see things differently because I'm an immigrant. I only come to Australia about 10 years ago. And to my word, it's not very domestic news. It's international news all the time. And also, what happened in China really cast an influence on me, and I want to reflecting this influence with my art. But I guess the difficulty is balancing the domestic news of focus with the international news in the focus.
We're so myopic in Australia. We are like, oh, what's happening in this suburb only? Yeah.
So, I do wish stick on the job and to keep pushing my perspective and introducing more fresh angle to the cartooning.
Yeah, that's something as someone who's worked in America, that's something I've definitely noticed about Australian news, is that it is so parochial. We aren't looking outside of this island. I want to share this clip Cathy sent me throughout the week. It made me laugh very loud. I'll read it out, Cathy. There we go. Here we go. There we go. This is about a Canadian cartoonist, Terry Mosher. On his right hand, he wears a ring his wife gave him in 2004. It's made of 13 skulls, representing the editors he outlasted at his newspaper, the Montreal Gazette. Like other cartoonists in liberal democracies, Mosher does not have to worry about government restrictions thanks to constitutionally protected rights that are the envy of his peers in other countries. He can cure his leaders and its armed services without fear of arrest or being attacked by police and paramilitaries or getting sacked at the behest of a government official. Cathy, in Australia, we don't have this kind of right for people that make work. This made me laugh out loud when you saw it. When you read this, what did you think?
I also thought that has occasionally been a thought in my mind when I've occasionally had clashes with editors. For one thing, I've often worked for two of the Fairfax mastheads at the same time. So I've been able to, if having a cartoon rejected by one of the mastheads, I've been able to just walk down the corridor and say, here's my Sunday cartoon. And they go, yeah, thanks very much. And it's all been fine. So I've been able to, play having two options. And the other thing is that I have also been able to occasionally think if I'm worried about the censoriousness of a particular editor, I can always remind myself that I've been here, I've outlived a great many editors.
We need to make you a ring.
So yes, maybe some beads I think I'd like.
Yeah, the nibs of every editor you've outlasted. There's much to be said about provocation in cartooning. And people will look, when something bad happens to someone who's drawn a cartoon, they'll say, well, they shouldn't have poked the bear. But the whole point of cartooning is to poke the bear. Or am I incorrect?
You have to poke it to tell if it's a real bear or just a balloon bear, right? Sometimes you poke it, it just exploded. And that's what we do. We might not use a needle, but we use a pencil. They also have a sharp tip. So, yeah, but it's important to be provocative because that's how we can diminish the authority from the people who are in power. They're already in a very advantaged position. Their duty is public servant. They're not political stars. And our duty is to bring them down from this altar of being ultimate power to the servant of the public. So I think that's particularly why it's very important and actually normal for people, not just cartoonists, but journalists and other groups, to doing the same job, to bring them down to level us.
Yeah, Cathy, is that how you see it?
Yeah, I would say that your bottom second one along, that one.
Okay, yeah.
Image. So for one thing, our job is to poke powerful, and a big way in which critical speech has been hijacked, or free speech has been hijacked, is simply put here, is that it's been hijacked as a way of attacking, I guess, the not necessarily the powerful, often the less powerful, or marginalised groups, to keep them marginalised and enforce the power of the elite, or the kind of the dominant group, and that's a very kind of cunning way that has been played, like you talked about, sort of setting out, just putting the idea out there, and then letting the people do the work of declaring that something needs to be said because they're not going to be silenced, and all the rest of it, where often that something that needs to be said is actually untrue, insubstantial. You're not taking into account the reasons, the societal inequality or the systemic conditions that allowed that thing to be in place. I'm not being very sensible there, but so we are there to poke, but we also have to poke mindfully and with a clear notion of what we're saying. I think that's the really important thing with cartoonists, which perhaps we have become much more aware of now in the last 10, 20 years, largely as a result of the amount of scrutiny that you get, not just from say the newspaper, where you've just got your newspaper readers, but you're putting things out on social media. Things on social media can traverse the oceans and reach the other side of the world, and so your audience is very much wider. So you need to be able to substantiate the point you make, really back it up, and know that you basically can defend your work.
Yeah. Let's go through a couple of your cartoons, Cathy, and then we'll pop over to Badiucao's work. You mentioned defamation before. Let's have a quick look at this Christian Porter cartoon. I've got a before and after shot, after it's been through lawyers. I'll read the one on the left. For me, to have to disprove something that didn't happen would be the end of the rule of law in Australia. Thank you. Do you want to do the other?
So, secret trials, partisan appointments, a toothless integrity body.
Nobody questions the rule of law.
So, yes.
So tell us about this, and if any keen bees out there can see the difference already.
So the difference between the cartoon on the left and the cartoon on the right, it's got one little difference, which is in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, frame 6, where Christian Porter is just standing there. He's not taking a bow, because when I submitted the first cartoon, where he had made his press conference and declared how very not only innocent but so mortified by this humiliating process that he shouldn't even need to defend his good name, and I saw it. I saw those tears, and they felt a little crocodile-ish to me. And so there I had him in the manner of a fine orator or actor, then taking a bow when he'd made his point. And the lawyers said, "Oh, you make him look like he's not sincere." And I said, "I don't think he is." And they said, "Yes, but we can't say that." So I... This was one where I decided that I really needed to argue it with the lawyers, because I felt that it really needed to be acknowledged. Also, the hypocrisy, as per the frame 7, bringing up the other aspects in which he, as Attorney General, had clearly flouted the rule of law, in my view. So, you know, I was I wasn't just making a point about him. But anyway, I was able to argue that, for one thing, I was saying nothing other than our own columnists were saying about his actions. Yeah. And for another thing, I said, I'll take away the bow. And they went, okay. And so it went.
It got published.
Yeah, and it got published. And I, you know, so far I haven't been sued.
Yasmin.
This is from, now, what year was Yasmin cancelled?
2017 maybe?
2017. I watched this with, like, sometimes the best thing you can do as a participant in social media is just stand back and watch. It's also a survival skill. You don't necessarily, I don't expect to buy into every controversy. I in fact deliberately refrain from buying into many controversies, especially when I see that all that will happen is you will just get like minced in the machine if you do jump in. But I watched that controversy or that story with some interest, because I thought it was more than, obviously from the point of view of racism, we know that there was a racist angle, or, you know, you may argue, but I will say I believe there was a racist angle to the blowback that Yasmin Abdelmajid got for her Anzac posts that were, you know, on Anzac Day. I thought there was a great irony in the fact that that revealed our kind of our religious fundamental spot, and our fundamentalist religious or sacred cow was Anzac
Day, yeah.
But it was not just anyone criticising it. I mean, you know, other people have tweeted and lost their job and stuff at SBS and things, and that was not racial. But she got a special punishment because she had also embodied to the you know, say the Murdoch commentariat. She had already embodied someone who represented identity culture, identity politics, and so she kind of got doubly punished. But she was also victim of the same thing that she had used when she had, you know, tweeted about a speech at a writers' festival where the author had discussed the idea of, you know, donning different characters and writing about them, and she had said, no, this is cultural appropriation, you can't do that. So she had been on one side a part of saying that's a sacred cow, you can't do it, and then she was victim of the sacred cow. So anyway, I kind of drew her as this. Here she was in the minefield of you know, things that you don't realise are going to blow up until you step on them.
Speaking of things that blew up, but online?
Yeah. I mean, only in a small way, but this is the tricky old thing of kind of not knowing where your cartoon's going to land. This was actually a small cartoon with a small article about a land holding in the Northern Territory where the, you know, white people that ran this particular farm had made a really good arrangement with the traditional landowners, and they were doing a lot of the work together, and it was a happy story of cooperation. And in this small space, how to say all that. So I went for the flag and had the two sets of footsteps. Only the week before, I had heard, probably on a Richard Feidler conversation, the story of an Indigenous guy who talked about having been to boarding school and all the rest of it. It was so important when he went back to country, being able to take his shoes off, because shoes were an anathema to him, and take his shoes off and to feel the ground under his feet, and walking barefoot was a you know, lovely thing for him to do. I got someone on Twitter who then kind of rounded up, obviously, some of their people to criticise that I was making a stereotype about Indigenous people going barefoot and being primitive, and also that I was depicting people walking on the Aboriginal flag. How dare I? How disrespectful! And also, how dare I use the Aboriginal flag? I had no right to do that, because at that stage the copyright had not been taken over by the government. So, like, from all these angles, it was sort of like one of those Sundays where you know, look at your phone and you go, oh, holy shit! I didn't realise that that I'd done all this. And it was, I guess, a case of there was no way to argue it, really, because they were determined to see it as they were. And I had to just consider who is making this argument. Is it a well-founded thing, intentions come into it and all the rest of it. But it makes you go, okay, right, well, I have to be, even more careful, extra careful, and know that not everybody's going to see the thing the way I intend it. Yeah. And, that's it's my small moment of a thing backfiring.
Yeah. Badiucao, let's talk about the Winter Olympics. Sure. This extremely provocative campaign here. Tell us about how this came about.
So at the beginning of this year, the Chinese government have another shot for the Olympic Games. And, Olympic Games is such an important thing for the Chinese government because it's giving it a platform to whitewash a lot of problems and creating this delusion that China is a normal country.
I heard the word sport wash the other day, actually.
Sport wash,
sport
that's
washing.
nice, yeah. Or snow wash.
Yeah.
They really emphasize on this event because, given what happened to Hong Kong, to the Uyghur people in the Xinjiang region, there's more and more, scandal and actually anti-humanity crime being exposed. And they really want to use this event to creating a new narrative, to allowing people to forgetting about the bad side. So I decided to create this kind of fake promotion posters.
They're really beautiful.
For the Olympic Games, which is actually inspired by the real poster from the Chinese government. But this post does not come in without controversy for some of the part. I was actually putting it online for people to free downloading and do their own protests around the world. And in United States, in the University of George Washington, there is some Chinese students who have more free thinking. They saw my works on Twitter, they downloaded, then printed out and put it into the campus. Then it got problem with the Chinese nationalist students.
Is it in Florida, this university?
No, in D.C.
Oh, D.C., sorry.
Yeah. So those nationalist students write a letter to the campus and saying, oh, these cartoons are racist, they're against Chinese people, this and that. Then the principal of the university rushed his judgment and ordered the security to taking down all the posters. And in the meantime, the pro-Chinese government student also posting in WeChat in this Chinese app saying they want to hunt down whoever put those posters up, and they want them to expel from the university. Wow. And then those students find me and told me, the student who put up the poster found me on Twitter and tell me what is going on. And I'm like, it's very absurd to actually calling these works racist cartoon because firstly, I'm a China born and very clearly what I want to targeting is the Chinese government instead of discriminate against the ordinary Chinese people. So this becomes something boiling on social media. Then this actually mainstream media from America started covering it, and result in the principal publicly apologize for his decision and withdraw the taking away of it. But obviously the argument from the Chinese government side is, particularly, for example, for the COVID one, they would argue, oh, this is a work that, almost saying the Chinese people are responsible for the spreading of the virus, but if you're looking at it, if you're reading into what's really happening in China, I think the Chinese government has this inevitable responsibility because the early stage of censorship. Do not forget Dr. Li Wenliang, who is a doctor, tried warning the public about existence in December 2019, not 2020. But he got arrested. He was forced to sign a confession saying, oh, I am so sorry to spreading the rumor of the virus. They're delaying a good management of controlling this virus for at least several weeks, which leading into this domestic outbreak become a pandemic that all of us suffered, regardless you're from China or not. So this work is really tackling about this issue, but then people starting to argue, okay, you're not really depicting the Chinese government, but you're depicting the Chinese sportsmen with the Chinese national flag. on their outfits. But here is another issue about our reading of what does it mean for a national flag. Particularly, I mean, there's a lot of discussion in Australia that if this national flag truly representing the identity of this country and the culture and its first people, but the similar discussion would never happen in China. You know, the true meaning of the Chinese national flag, you got 5 stars on the red flag, right? A big star and 4 small stars like wrapping around. But the true meaning of those 5 stars is the big star representing China's Communist Party. And all 4 stars represent different classes from the society. The meaning of this arrangement is forever, everybody in this country must follow the leadership of China's Communist Party. So how can this meaning representing the rich culture of China and the Chinese people's beauty? No, it's a political propaganda result that helping this government stay in power. So by depicting this national flag, it's not really attacking on the Chinese people, but attacking on the message behind this very culture symbol. And then after this, scandal, I get a chance to explain all these things that I just, tell you in the public. So finally, we have a good result. But, work like this constantly being framed as racist is problematic because the Chinese government knows this will silence people.
God. Have you thought about getting a Union Jack in your flag? It's really great. Nothing like having another country's flag on your flag to make you patriotic. All right, let's have another look at somebody else's work. We're going to look at somebody else's work, Badiucao, and tell us the story behind it. This is a Melbourne story, so folks in this room may not know what's going on here. Whose work is this, and what's happening here?
Well, this artist come by handle as, I think, CTO Art from Instagram. He's a mural artist from Melbourne, and recently he just announced this new art that featuring a Russia soldier embracing the Ukraine soldier under the name of peace and love. However, it created a huge controversial because the Ukrainian community does not accept it. They think it's extremely offensive, particularly at this stage. And I am very emphasizing on the Ukraine side instead of, blindly supporting this artist.
They're making an equivalence between the Russians and the Ukrainians.
Yeah.
Well, one of the argument is like we're talking about war crimes as if it's a rapist is doing its crime in the same time, and now you're asking the victim to embrace the predator, which is just inappropriate and offensive to all the victims. However, the artist doesn't accept it very well. He's trying to defend himself, explain himself. So I made a commentary piece that, depending on that, trying to show what is really going on in the reality. I mean, yes, it's great to have love and peace, but it comes with particular time. I think reconciliation is beautiful, but it should not come before there has been a failed trial to acknowledge what the crime is. It should have justice first before this kind of shallow calling for peace and love at this particular moment. So I want to bring this back to the reality. So if this is happening, the Ukraine soldier would actually do that. I don't know if you've been following on the latest video that reviewing in Ukraine these days. There has been massive pit of corpse and massacre site being discovered in the Ukraine. And one of the photo I remember, there was just this arm that has decayed into bones, but he have this wrist bone as the Ukraine flag on his arm. And evidence has showing all those victims has been tortured to death, not just, an easy way. So giving this reality, it's really inappropriate for something like that. Then the artist echoing to the criticism, and he chose to covering this menu over the night. And we think, it's good. Finally, he learned a lesson, and he realized this is not a right thing to do. However, lately, he's been jumping from apology to defense again, and giving a very awful answer for why he's covering the mural. He says, I'm covering the mural not because I'm kind of caving in front of the criticism, but I want to increase the NFT value of this art by destroying the origin so it's less copy and it be more expensive, which for me
I don't know, if you have a look under your bag, there should be a sick bag underneath your chair. If anyone wants to throw up, go for it.
Can I also mention on this topic? It's one of the topics where when I've done cartoons that are critical of Russia, even prior to the invasion, and then ongoing, I quite often get the kind of response, both on Twitter and also occasionally by direct emails to me, which have a certain tone of, kind of, there's a Russian-y tone about them, where it's, I saw your work that is criticizing the Russians, and you are clearly a victim of Western propaganda. And you must be so embarrassed to show your ignorance like this. And here are some articles that you may want to read to properly inform yourself about the real situation going on there. And I've come to, the first couple of times this happened, I sort of, when they're going, you must feel embarrassed about your ignorance. Well, of course, a cartoonist hates to find that they're ignorant, and But then I've now kind of observed that there's a real script to it, and it happens about Russia, it happens about China, it happens about Middle East commentary as well. There's a real sort of it's a way of getting in your head.
In a few moments, we'll have a Q&A. So if you want to ask a question of Cathy or Badiucao, make your way to the microphone. Before we get to the final part, Badiucao, is there anything you've done in the past that you wouldn't want to draw again, or you wouldn't want to make again? Is there a bit of work you're like, well, I don't think I would ever do that again?
No. Let me tell
Great
you why.
answer.
Let me tell you why. Because, this festival is called A Dangerous Idea. I think you can read it from two directions. One is the topic itself is controversial, and so it's dangerous. The other thing is the topic itself is merely common sense. But because your environment or your born country is not such a country celebrating freedom of speech, then it subjects you to this very dangerous situation. So I think like most of my cartoons are never really touching the real controversial concept in a free society. I'm really just defending the common sense in democracy and free society. But this problem, this only become a problem because we're talking about authoritarian regime.
Yeah.
So for me, like maybe in the future, like I will do real controversial things. But now I'm really just defending the common sense. So no, I don't regret.
Right. Cathy, anything you wouldn't draw again?
Look, you live and you learn, and through my many years of doing cartoons, I have occasionally done things where people have written to me and said, that really was an unfortunate depiction you made because you perpetuated a stereotype and it was wrong and it was hurtful. And I've gone, yeah, I have to learn from that. And so, there have been times when apology is appropriate, and I think thinking you know it all is a real trap, and you always have to be prepared to know that there's more to know. There's more to know. There are other points of view, and you can have humility.
We'll take a couple of questions now, and then Badiucao's got a special announcement to make. So we'll take some questions down here. And make sure, if you are going to ask a question, make sure it is a question. And if you're from the Chinese consulate, please go away, okay?
So you all seem to be free speech champions. So what do you think about cartoons that propagate hate and things like that? Like if you're thinking it, should you be able to advertise it?
Good question.
I think that while there's, I think cartoons that propagate hate are unfortunate. I don't think that people who do draw cartoons that are deemed by some people to be offensive, I don't think that cartoonists deserve violent retribution. I think they need to be able to justify their work, but they're not always drawn for all of the audiences that end up seeing them. If something is drawn for a narrow audience, I mean, that's the case of our current world, that something that is for this audience lands over there and becomes a symbol of hate. So, I mean, I think a cartoonist has to take responsibility for what they're doing, and doing things merely for provocation is not, to me, a good justification for a cartoon. I will defend the cartoonist's right to freedom, but I won't recommend that sowing hate is a worthwhile undertaking.
Thank you for your question. Next question.
Hello. I know you kind of went over this, but my question is, what are your responses to the rhetoric that paints you as racist? And, how do you challenge these points of view? What are the different responses that you might give to these people?
For me, I think the principle is really simple. When you're criticizing a government, a power body, it's different from discriminating against ordinary people. It's not a myth that, takes rocket science to understand the difference. I don't think cartoonists or criticizers should, fade away from those topics, but instead explain the difference properly to the audience, to educate the audience, to have a communication with the audience, to claim this kind of misjudged, misleading information.
Thanks very much. Thanks for your question. Over here.
First time caller. On Monday, News Corp cancelled their comic strips. How dangerous is it that we have our sense of humour cancelled?
I've got just the authority on that. The president of the Australian Cartoonists Association is here with us today.
It sounds awfully like a Dorothy Dixer to me. But indeed, I have been speaking about the fact that News Corp is suspending its comic strips, not all of its cartoons. It's still running editorial and political cartoons, but the comic strips, which have been part of the fabric of the newspaper for a century or so, they're deciding that they're not really necessary, that readers can do without them. And I think it's like, I don't know, it's like kind of paving over the garden or something. It's like removing the little part of the paper that brought whimsy and some joy and some relief and some respite from the hard stuff. And I know that are also around the world and in Australia, the jobs of cartoonists have also dried up considerably, and it's been largely a result of the tightening, lack of advertising to pay for it. We're no longer the rivers of gold.
Yeah, and we should point out they haven't removed all comedy. Andrew Bolt is still writing in News Corp papers. A last question here, and then we'll head to Badiucao.
Hi, I'm just curious to know how much of your daily life is given over to researching political landscape, what's happening in the world, and is this a chore, a work chore, or is it a pleasure?
So, living life, guys, is it hard?
It's a fantastic question, and in a way, it's like from the moment you wake up until deadline for me, and then you have another little look after deadline just to see what else is going on. But because news is ever turning, ever evolving, you kind of have to be on it all the time, but also I find that you have to be able to turn it off. Yeah. And mostly, say for the weekend, for me, that's when I turn it off.
For me, I wake up just viewing the latest death threats from Twitter. And I've been keeping a record for it to use it as material of my art. Then, just reading news and reflect and working. I think to be cartoonist is really hard to tell if it's a hobby or work. It's just continuing working on the subject. Because that's a voice that I don't have for 20 years in China. And now I just want to use all my time to make up the years that I lost there.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much for your question. Great question. Badiucao, you've brought something extremely interesting to close the show today. I'm going to put up the slide. You want to talk us through what you've brought with us on this table here?
So what you see from the big screen is something heavily loaded in China history. That it actually a rewarding kit that being given to the killer soldiers from the Tiananmen massacre in 1989. In order to bind their loyalty, the Chinese government actually create, certificate, medals, and a special watch and give it to the soldiers who actually pull the triggers in the Tiananmen Square. And this thing, after a while, the Chinese government realized, oh, shit, this is the evidence of the massacre. We must make it disappear. But by the time, they actually calling those murder soldiers as the guardians of the Republic of China. Just last year, there's an auction house called the Fellows in London. They find one of these watch and they want to sell it for profit. And when I learned this news, I write about it on Twitter, which leading for more like mainstream media, BBC and The Guardian starting writing about it. Then the auction house decide to withdraw the selling because they know it is not appropriate. I followed up, explained my position as saying, I'm an artist. I am very interested in acquire this watch with whatever the price the vendor want to naming. Not for that I want to make fortune or money from it, but I want to have it to display in an appropriate way, like in a museum or publication like this, to tell in the history behind it. But the auction house is saying, no, we don't do that because the vendor is afraid that he will be attacked or cancelled due to the connection with this watch. But I think the true reason behind this is they do not want to deal with me in a way that they will jeopardize their Chinese market. So it's a disappointment to feel like this very important piece of evidence that about China's history will disappear. But just after a week, another guy from America, he posted a tweet about the watch. He said, oh, I got this actually decades ago. And, I just read about this BBC and The Guardian newspaper and find out I have the same watch. So I followed up with this person and again, I offered, I would like to pay whatever the money that you named. And I'm not doing this for profit because I'm an artist, I'm an activist, I want to tell the story behind it. And guess what? This very generous gentleman just gave the watch to me for free because he also understands the value of the watch and he is in the same side with me. And today I actually bringing this very watch to show it here. And also I've been making artworks, not cartoon this time, about the watch to commentate on it. It was exhibiting in Italy last year. It's actually an installation that I create 64 blood watch with my own blood. The reason for 64 is actually it resembled the date of the massacre in 1989, June 4th. In China, we call it 64. And on that very day, this two number, you cannot post this two number on China's internet. 6 and 4 is censored on that very day every year. And also, if we may go back to the previous photo, several years ago, there is a soldier whose name is Li Xiaoming who immigrated to Australia, and he decided to speak up of this unspoken history, and he donated this rewarding kit to the Immigration Museum in Melbourne, but without the watch because he lost the watch. But unfortunately, for some reason, the Immigration Museum never exhibiting this kit. There is archive in their website, but I don't think they actually physically display this thing. So this time I want to propose to the museum that now I have the watch, we can make the kit complete. Why not we actually having an exhibition about it and telling the history of not just for China, but also a part of us, Australia, because we have so many Chinese Australian immigrants here. And I think this will be a very meaningful way to my people in Australia, but also to a broader humanity globally. And here I just want to make this announcement that I'm willing to give the chance for the museum to do the things right and exhibiting this with a full kit.
Amazing. Thank you, Badiucao. And thank you, everybody here. Please thank Cathy Wilcox. Thank Badiucao. And we'll see you next time. Thanks for being a lovely audience.
The Festival of Dangerous Ideas is presented by the Ethics Centre. The Ethics Centre delivers programs and experiences designed to bring ethics to the centre of our life. We offer counselling for individuals, leadership and development services, events, courses and educational resources. As a non-profit charity, we rely heavily on donations and memberships. Please visit the Ethics Centre website to find out more. Thank you.